Well, China's ruling Communist Party has gathered for its most important political event, arguably for decades. President Xi Jinping sitting poised to secure an unprecedented third term, all amid a fractious geopolitical landscape, deteriorating relations with the U.S., and slower growth at home. Xi used his Sunday speech to the party Congress to emphasize the importance of, in his words, high-quality growth, and the reality of a struggling economy certainly amplified by the failure to release GDP data as scheduled. Joining us now is Christopher Marquis. He's Sinyi Professor of Chinese Management at the University of Cambridge. He's also the author of Mao and Markets. Professor, good to talk to you today. You know, we've come to expect these party congresses to pretty much be about messaging, not about a new shift in policy or an introduction of a new strategy here. But I thought it was interesting. The Sunday speech that we got from President Xi felt a little more downbeat. He used the word struggle multiple times in what was considered a pretty short speech, also seemed to brace the Chinese people for economic conflict. I mean, what was your takeaway and what we have heard from him so far?
Yeah, no, I totally concur and agree with you. I do think that, you know, it hit all the sort of common messaging that people were thinking it was going to hit. But clearly, with the economy down, with COVID controls likely to continue, you know, I mean, China's economy is not going to be, you know, going up anytime soon.
And so what's the expectation? I mean, do we get any more clarity on any kind of shift here? He certainly seemed to double down on the zero COVID policy. Didn't talk too much about what we're seeing in the real estate sector in terms of the debt growing, you know, defaults, concerns about defaults piling up there. In terms of the economic picture, as the world's second largest economy, what do we come to expect based on what we've heard from the president?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, China's years of, 8% growth are behind it. And I think, I mean, part of that is the zero COVID has really slowed things down. You know, you mentioned in your opening this high quality growth idea, which, certainly I support in many ways because it's about, lessening China's tremendous income inequality. Unfortunately, a lot of times, many of those policies end up, resulting in robbing from the rich to give to the poor, instead of having a more systematic way of sort of rebalancing income inequality. So I think it's, more of the same as, compared to the last 2 years.
We certainly didn't hear the Chinese leader single out the U.S., but he did talk about sort of a divided world, which was kind of a nudge at what we've been seeing in terms of U.S. policy. Going into the party Congress, of course, we had the Biden administration release these, really harsh measures, especially against the semiconductor industry, which seems to signal more of a division globally, especially around technology. I wonder how you're looking at that and the implications, not just in China, but in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I mean, the CHIPS bill, Biden's executive action around it. I mean, I think particularly the executive action, I think went further than many observers thought that they would. And I think this, is going to result in a new era of, technological splitting. I mean, the U.S. and China are connected in so many ways, economic ways. But, if people with U.S. passports can't be working in Chinese semiconductor firms, I mean, that creates a rift that is really hard to get over.
On the issue of Taiwan, we did hear Xi talk about peaceful reunification still being the goal, but sort of also alluding to the fact that he shouldn't hesitate to use force if necessary. I mean, where does that tension stand right now? And did we glean anything new from how the Chinese leader is thinking about this right now?
I mean, clearly, I think he put sort of stronger stakes in the sand than I would have expected around the Taiwan issue if things were just going to, sort of in some ways, stabilize. I just saw Anthony Blinken recently had a statement and a speech that, he feels that forceful reunification may occur in the near term. So I think that, observers, knowledgeable observers are really very worried about the trajectory of, China's approach to Taiwan.
Finally, I see you've got your book, Mao and Markets, right behind you there. But this is an interesting comparison that you're making. I mean, we have heard the comparisons going into this party Congress that essentially by him cementing this third term, it does make him the most powerful Chinese leader since Mao Zedong.
Right.
In terms of economic policy, what are the parallels that you see?
I think one parallel is this interest in putting sort of the party above and ideology above economic relations. This, the past 30 years under Deng Xiaoping and, Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, this was not necessarily the case. So I think really this sort of party at the center, ideology first. I think also the idea of really having this top-down campaign logic is a big deal. So, Mao had campaigns throughout his time as China's leader. And you look at semiconductors, you look at anti-corruption, you look at COVID. I mean, these are all very much about let's have a top-down campaign. So I think those are the two key parallels that I think help us understand Xi and his governance.
So really quickly, does this mean that this isn't about Chinese ambitions to be the world's largest economy anymore? Has that kind of been put on hold?
Oh, I don't think the ambitions have necessarily been put on hold. I do think that, some of the policies are counter that. But, another, sort of famous statement of Mao was sort of standing up to the West and, resuming China's place in the world. And I don't think that Xi has put that idea behind him at all.
Christopher Marquis, Sinyi Professor of Chinese Management at the University of Cambridge and author of Mao and Markets. Appreciate your time today.
Great. Thanks for having me on.